The beef between Drake and Kendrick Lamar never really died. It just went quiet for a minute. Now it's back, louder than before, with a leaked track called 1 a.m. in Albany, throwing gasoline on everything right before Drake's ICEMAN album was supposed to take center stage. Drake took aim at Kendrick's height, his legacy, his spot in the conversation. And word is Kendrick wasn't sitting still about it. Hip-hop is on pause right now, everyone's watching. The Big Three tension that had the internet in a chokehold last year, yeah, that's not over. May 14th, 2026, a 5-minute record quietly leaks onto the internet, and within hours it's all anyone can talk about. Drake clearly couldn't let things settle. Less than 27 hours before ICEMAN officially arrived, that track was already making rounds, and it had fingerprints all over the Drake-Kendrick war. ICEMAN is not just another album drop, this is a statement. Drake hasn't released a solo project since the entire Kendrick chapter unfolded and reshuffled the power rankings in rap. Before that, For All the Dogs in 2023 was the last time he stepped out alone. People are going line by line on this thing. Nothing gets a pass, every word gets weighed. Drake understood the assignment. That 5-minute runtime was him addressing the whole rap landscape in one sitting. He pokes at Kendrick's height, suggesting that being number one means actually leading, and that Kendrick hasn't closed that gap. It reads as deliberate, calculated, and personal. Drake has gone there before with Kendrick's stature, and he clearly has no plans to stop. Drake had already used Kendrick's height as a punchline back in 2024 on push-ups. Doing it again on this track is intentional and calculated. He's been sitting on that angle and clearly has no plans to retire it. But honestly, the height jab wasn't even the bar that had the internet locked in. The entire track is dense. Drake went straight at the idea that Kendrick's momentum during their battle was built on drama and deception, rather than real lyrical superiority, framing Kendrick as someone who needed the internet chaos to carry him further than his pen could. Then Drake brought LeBron James into it. LeBron had thrown his public weight behind Kendrick during the beef, and Drake made sure to acknowledge that on Kiddushim, pointing to LeBron's career-long habit of jumping ship whenever a better situation presented itself, saying it made complete sense he ended up on Kendrick's side. Drake also shut down any conversation about his bloodline, telling LeBron to stay in his lane and off the topic entirely. J. Cole got a mention too, but even that bar loops back to the Drake and Kendrick dynamic. Drake referenced the image of a man too comfortable and settled to stay in the fight, a clear reference to Cole firing at Kendrick with 7-minute drill in 2024 and then walking it back with a public apology. Drake is essentially saying he's nothing like that. Where Cole backed off, Drake stayed in Kendrick's face and never flinched. All three of these leaked tracks dropped inside a 24-hour window before ICEMAN officially released. A tighter version of Supermax surfaced, then 3 p.m. in New Orleans, and then 1 a.m. in Albany, which swallowed up all the attention. The bigger question fans had been sitting with was whether Drake would use this album as a direct continuation of the war with Kendrick or pivot, and let the music speak without the beef energy. Those leaks settled the debate immediately. Drake is not done. To fully understand the weight of this moment, you have to trace the Drake and Kendrick story back to where it actually started, because the tension running through the Albany track didn't come from nowhere. It was built slowly, quietly, over more than a decade. These two weren't always circling each other like opponents. Back in 2011, Drake brought Kendrick on to Take Care for the Buried Alive interlude. Kendrick was fresh off Section .80, still climbing, and Drake was already a star, and he chose Kendrick. The following year, Kendrick was opening Drake's Club Paradise tour dates. They were in the same circle making moves together, and the rap world read it as genuine alignment between two generational talents. The shift came in 2013 when Kendrick got on Big Sean's control and declared himself the measuring stick for an entire era of rap. You're a brother, king of the coast, king of New York, king of the moment. He said it was competition, not war, but that distinction did very little to soften the impact. Drake felt it, the whole industry felt it. And from that point forward, the relationship between Drake and Kendrick was never quite the same, even if neither of them said so publicly for years. For nearly a decade, both men dropped music with bars that fans and insiders recognized as pointed, but neither would fully commit to a direct confrontation. What finally broke the silence was J. Cole naming all three of them, himself, Drake, and Kendrick, as the undisputed Big Three on First Person Shooter in 2023. Cole meant it as a celebration of where rap stood at that moment. Kendrick heard it differently. On Like That in March 2024, he dismantled the concept entirely, making it plain that he wasn't sharing a throne with anyone, and that the top of hip-hop belonged to him alone. That was the exact moment the long simmering Drake and Kendrick Cold War became something the whole world could see and feel. Kendrick had drawn the line clearly, and Drake stepped across it immediately. Push-ups came first, then the tailor-made freestyle dropped straight to Instagram. Drake escalating, not retreating, making every move in plain sight, while Kendrick prepared what would become one of the most talked about stretches in rap history. Drake took the tailor-made freestyle to a different level by using AI-generated vocals to simulate Tupac Shakur and Snoop Dogg, essentially putting words in the mouths of Kendrick's biggest influences to shame him for going quiet after push-ups. The concept was bold, but it came with immediate consequences. Tupac's estate came out publicly against the unauthorized use of his voice, threatened legal action, and within days, Drake pulled the track from social media entirely. By April 26th, it was gone, but the conversation had already spread everywhere, and Kendrick had seen everything he needed to see. What came next wasn't a single response record, it was a coordinated week-long dismantling that permanently rearranged how the rap world talked about both of them. Kendrick opened with Euphoria, 6 dense, surgical minutes that went after every layer Drake had built around himself. His cultural identity, his authenticity, his personal relationships, his standing as an artist. Kendrick made the case that Drake was more interested in chasing acceptance from the culture than actually being part of it. Can a manipulator who shaped narratives rather than lived them? He called out the Tupac stunt directly, making it clear that crossing that line had consequences, and he used Cole's retreat from the battle as a contrast to his own full commitment to this war. Less than 72 hours after Euphoria, Kendrick was back with 616 in LA, suggesting that people operating inside Drake's own OVO circle didn't actually have loyalty to him and were quietly aligned with the other side. That was a precision move, going after the foundation itself rather than just the man standing on it. The same day 616 in LA surfaced, Drake dropped Family Matters. Nearly 8 minutes of direct personal attack. He made the allegation that one of Kendrick's children with his longtime partner Whitney Alford was not biologically his, pointing at Kendrick's manager and creative partner Dave Free. Drake went after Kendrick's household, his relationship, his children, his credibility as a man, everything. What nobody was ready for was how fast the response came back. Minutes after Family Matters landed, Meet the Grams was already out. Kendrick addressed Drake's family members individually, his mother, his father, his son Adonis. He made explicit and deeply personal allegations about Drake as a parent and claimed Drake had been hiding the existence of a child the public knew nothing about. Then, less than 24 hours later, Not Like Us arrived and changed everything. The track made accusations about Drake's behavior around minors that were severe enough to shift the entire temperature of the rap industry. The streaming response was historic. Not Like Us broke the record for single-day streams by a hip-hop song in US Spotify history. Kendrick's overall numbers climbed nearly 49% in the days that followed. Drake's dropped by roughly 5% in the same window. Kendrick hadn't just won a battle, he had rewritten the power structure of an entire era of rap in 1 week, and there was no easy path back from it. Drake thinking things would settle down after May 2024 was a misread from the beginning. Kendrick took the victory into the most public space possible. At his Super Bowl halftime show, Serena Williams appeared on stage as a performer, a moment the entire internet read as a directed shot at Drake given their long-rumored history together. The performance landed with critics. Lisa Respers France of CNN pointed to Not Like Us as the defining moment of the entire show, while Maria Sherman of the Associated Press framed Kendrick performing that specific track on the biggest stage in American sports as a continuation of a victory lap that showed no signs of ending. Nearly 100 million people watched Kendrick perform the song that had defined his dominance over Drake on the most watched broadcast of the year. No album rollout could walk that back. Drake responded on multiple fronts. 6 days after the Super Bowl, he and Party Next Door released their collaborative album Some Sexy Songs for You on Valentine's Day 2025. Drake had suggested he planned to keep the beef energy away from the project, but a verse on Give Me a Hug was immediately read as him framing himself as someone who had absorbed everything thrown at him and refused to fall. He was also photographed during an Australian tour run wearing a shirt printed with bullet holes, leaning into the image of a man who had taken direct hits and was still standing. Then came the legal front. Drake filed a lawsuit against Universal Music Group in January 2025, arguing that Kendrick's parent label knowingly distributed and promoted a record that falsely painted him as a predator. His argument was that UMG profited from a song built on accusations that were fabricated. Judge Vargas dismissed the case in October 2025, ruling that Not Like Us operates as protected expression rather than factual statement, and that no reasonable listener would walk away from the track believing it was presenting documented facts about Drake. Drake appealed in January 2026, arguing that the ruling created a dangerous precedent suggesting rap diss tracks could never produce legal accountability regardless of content. UMG responded by pointing out that Drake had directly encouraged Kendrick to come at him in the very ways he was now suing over, that his own bars in the tailor-made freestyle had set the exact terms of engagement he was now trying to take to court. In April 2026, law scholars from institutions across the country filed briefs supporting the dismissal, reinforcing the same core argument. Drake had entered this war willingly, escalated it himself, and had essentially invited the content he was now treating as defamation. Drake was losing legally and culturally. ICEMAN was walking into that situation with an enormous burden. It had to somehow address everything that had happened between Drake and the rest of rap, reframe the Kendrick narrative, and move public conversation past Not Like Us and the embarrassment of suing over it. That is the weight sitting on every single track of that album. Then, 4 days before ICEMAN dropped, Kendrick reminded everyone who controlled the moment. On May 11, 2026, the Not Like Us music video vanished from YouTube, and when it reappeared, it was a fresh upload with the counter reset, erasing 468 million views completely. The confusion across social media was instant. Simultaneously, Kendrick's GNX album briefly disappeared from Apple Music, Euphoria was pulled from streaming, and the videos for Not Like Us and Luther came down from YouTube. Everything came back within hours, but the fact that it happened across multiple platforms at the same time ruled out any glitch as an explanation. The theory that spread everywhere was straightforward. Kendrick deliberately reset the view count to push the video back into fresh recommendation algorithms during the exact week Drake's album was scheduled to release. Some fans also connected the re-upload to Drake's lawsuit, pointing out that a clean slate of numbers put some distance between the song and any previous streaming data tied to the inflation allegations Drake had raised in court. Whatever the actual intent, the result was concrete. The re-uploaded video reportedly crossed 8 million views within hours, with some fans tracking 25 million within the first 2 days. 3 days after that, 1 a.m. in Albany leaked, and the main storyline everyone circled back to was exactly what it had always been: Drake and Kendrick. Multiple sources confirmed Kendrick is named directly and repeatedly throughout the record. Drake rapped bars about morality, religion, fame, and legacy around specific shots at Kendrick's spiritual messaging, the accuracy of his lyrics, and his actual standing in the culture. The war clearly was not over, and that's exactly what makes ICEMAN the most loaded album Drake has ever had to release. This isn't just a project, it's a public statement being made under a microscope by a man who spent the better part of 2 years watching Kendrick Lamar dismantle everything he built and then celebrate it on the Super Bowl stage in front of the entire country. Every single person who presses play on this album is walking in with that full context already loaded. The 1 a.m. in Albany leak alone tells you Drake is not approaching ICEMAN as a reset. He's not trying to sidestep the Kendrick conversation or pretend the last 2 years didn't happen. He's walking straight into it. He's naming Kendrick, challenging his narrative, going after the people who sided against him, and making sure every listener understands that his version of events is not the version Kendrick spent a week selling to the world. That takes a level of confidence or desperation, depending on who you ask, that most artists wouldn't have after absorbing what Drake absorbed in 2024. But here's the thing that keeps this interesting: Kendrick has not been silent. The Not Like Us re-upload, the timing of it, the platform disruptions happening the week ICEMAN was set to drop, that was not a coincidence. Kendrick has been watching every move and responding without saying a single word publicly. He doesn't need to. The numbers, the timing, the Super Bowl, the lawsuit outcome, all of it is already working in his favor, and he knows it. So what does Drake actually do with this album? Does 1 AM in Albany represent the full energy of ICEMAN, or is it just the surface? Because if the entire project carries that same confrontational weight, Drake is essentially betting his 9th solo album on his ability to reframe a cultural loss through music alone, without a courtroom, without a cosign, and without Kendrick making a single mistake to hand him an opening. What's clear is that ICEMAN arriving right now in this specific moment with these specific leaks surfacing the way they did has turned what was supposed to be a comeback album into something much more complicated and much more watched. The rap world is not evaluating this project in isolation. It is being evaluated directly against Not Like Us, against the Super Bowl performance, against every bar Kendrick landed that Drake never fully answered on record. And Kendrick is sitting on whatever he has next, watching to see what ICEMAN actually says before deciding when and how hard to respond.